Welcome to our webinar, everyone. This is When Good PPC Campaigns Go Bad, a deep look into your related data. AdWords campaigns that used to do pretty well and then suddenly are falling flat. So today, Google Ads expert Brad Geddes is with us, and he's going to show us how to autopsy any of your perished pay-per-click ads and bring them back to life. We'll also look beyond Google Ads reporting and show how to get better insights using Google Data Studio. I just want to introduce to you Brad Geddes. He's the author of Advanced Google AdWords, and he's the co-founder of the award-winning company Analysis, an automatic platform for ad testing and PPC recommendation. Brad frequently writes columns for Search Engine Land, and he co-moderates the AdWords forum on Webmaster World. He's also keynoted and spoken at more than 125 conferences and has led more than 100 AdWords seminars. Plus, he's a course advisor for the digital marketing curriculum here at Simplilearn. So welcome, Brad, and thank you for your patience, and especially thank you for joining us with all this amazing information.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be here as always. And to everyone, on the webinar today, what we're going to go through, right, is looking at how metrics are interrelated. So when something suddenly goes bad or it goes good, right, you have to figure out, right, what the root cause is. If it's good, you want more of it. If it's bad, of course, you want to go fix it. And the issue here, right, is it's usually often not found by the analyst. You got a client or your boss calls you up and says, hey, our conversions are up 19%. And sometimes that's not a good thing. Or, hey, our spend's up 72%. Why? And hey, if your conversion's up 100%, well, spend this 72 is actually pretty good. And so what we're going to do is sort of dig through this chart and look at how data flows. So at the top level, right, we have before the click items, right? This is your search volume, how many impressions you get, and why you lose them. And then once our ad can be displayed, right, our impression, then we can get clicks from that, right? So our data falls down to our clicks, which is functions of CTRs, and then, of course, accumulates our cost data. Someone goes to our website, now they can convert, right? And that gets into our conversion data. And so, we always want to start, right, by saying, well, what's our volume we're working with, right? Did our volume go up or down? And if it went up or down, why? So what we're usually looking at, right, is a time frame compared to another time frame, right? So it could be 1 month compared to the previous month. It could be compared to year over year, and we'll look at which one to use in a minute for both of those. Now, you lose impressions for certain reasons, right? There's this huge search volume out there. Now, you may capture a specific part of those impressions. And so we lose impressions, right, usually based upon our impression share budget, right, or a lost impression share rank. And those are influenced by our budgets, our quality scores, our bids, so forth. And so what we're usually looking for is, where did something go down, right? Was it in our search impression share? Was it in our lost budget, right? Where did we lose it? And then once we find that, we can start to drill down into more root causes. So for instance, right, if volume and impression share change, right, things we want to start looking at initially. Well, do we change our targeting? Do we add a bunch of negative keywords or new keywords? Right? Did we change some match types? Did the PPC engine change their targeting rules? Right? This happens every so often. Match type definitions are changed, or audience definitions are changed. So if it's not a targeting change, right, next we want to look at seasonality. Right, so this is where you get into comparisons we're going to look at in a second, year over year versus month over month. And then lastly, budgets. So when you think about trending, right, to say, hey, right, what do we want to compare against? Is it the last month? Is it the same time period last year? This often gets into your seasonality effects. So for instance, right here we have the purple charts 2016, the green charts 2017. Now, if we were to compare March to February of any year, doesn't matter which year we pick, it looks like March is a really bad year because we're getting into the low of our seasonality. So just doing that March versus February comparisons are not a very good comparison in a seasonal business, right? Something like that we want to do year over year, right? Where if, right, we don't have that huge, right, U-shaped sort of trend, we're much more linear, then we want to do more month-over-month comparisons or week-over-week comparisons. So that goes for all the comparisons you're doing, whether it's clicks, impressions, conversions, etc. So then if we're losing impression share due to budget, right, well, the questions really are, did the budgets change? Did they go up or did they go down? And don't forget the shared budgets. If you lose more impressions due to budget and budgets did not change, then it's pretty much always your cost per click went up a lot, which meant now you could afford less total clicks, which means your budget runs out earlier. Therefore, right, you have a larger impression share loss due to budget changes. And so when we think about why do we lose impressions, right, those are the main things. Now, it is useful to trend budgets, right, because lost impression share budget is very good for looking at, hey, if we changed our budget, how would this affect our data, right? So this is really good information, right? You can give to your boss or your client saying, hey, if we change our budget from $120 a day to $200 a day, we're going to see a 20% increase in conversions, right? And we'll see our CPA increase of X, right? That's important stuff. It's also useful to look at impression share budget trends to see if you're gaining a lot of impressions, right? Will you eventually hit your cap? So for instance, in this account, right, the blue lines is the cumulative daily budget available to be spent. The red line is what we actually spent. So in November, we spent below our budget. So we would have no impression share loss due to budget. In January, right, we almost got to our budget, not quite. So we might have a little impression share loss, but it's pretty low. By February, our budget was totally capped, right? So we actually hit them, and we probably lose more impression share budget. Now, this is what happens when this is a seasonal business where their actually high season is February and March, and they're building up to it. Then you have your targeting with a good budget in November, and by the time it gets to February, you actually can't reach all the available impressions. And so that's another reason that your impression share budget loss can be effective, is due to the volume. Now, if you're losing impression share due to rank, right, one of the things we want to look at is average position, and we're going to talk about the new metrics in a moment. And so if we're losing it due to rank, one of the big things is, did our quality scores change? If our quality scores dropped, right, that means our ad rank is going to go down, which means we can show in less auctions. So then our lost impression share rank is going to increase. Did your impression top percentages change? So that's where the new metrics we'll look at in a second that Google introduced last year and will be the metric going forward September of this year as average position is going to be sunsetted. And lastly, did bids change significantly? If you increase your bid or decrease your bid a lot, it's going to have a major effect on your ad rank, which then can either, right, see you lose more impressions due to ad rank loss or less impressions. So if you see in your impression volume one of those changes, whether it's impression share, lost budget, impression share, lost rank, etc., change, this is where you want to start digging into why that change happens. We also like to graph out quality score over time. This lets us see how things are changing, right? So we can anticipate, hey, our quality score, and this is weighted quality score for an account. Our quality score at the end of January for our expected CTR went from below average to average, which means we're going to see a large increase in ad ranks across the board, which also means then we may spend more budget because we're going to be in higher positions and therefore we can get more clicks. Now, if you see that your impression volume hasn't changed that much, right, and you've got differences in metrics, then we move right from impression to when click parts happen. So you get an impression. If someone clicks on it, you obviously get a click, and those two metrics determine our click-through rates, right? And every time you get a click, then you pay a CPC. right? Your clicks and your CPC determine what your cost is. So CTR has a huge amount of influential factors in your account. So if you see there's a major CTR change in your account, right, then we have to think about, okay, did we do some reorganization, right? Because that relationship of keywords to ad in an ad group, right, really affects CTR. Did we change our ad rotation settings, right? Did we add a bunch of new ads and Google messed up our ad serving with their ad rotation? Did we change some ad tests? Did we introduce new ones or pause, like old losers? If you pause a bunch of low CTR ads, of course, you're going to have a higher click-through rate. Again, more clicks, more cost. Did you change your ad types? Right? Responsive search ads are much more volatile in terms of CTRs jumping up and down than ETAs. They're a lot more static. Did your impressions change that you're actually getting clicks for? So if your top impression share, right, goes up a lot, your ads are shown in top positions more often, well, that's going to be a higher click-through rate than low impression shares when your ads are at the bottom of the page. So that makes a big difference. If you change keywords, change any targeting, that'll affect CTR. And so CTR, if you see a change, is one of the most influential factors across the account for a click volume. It also has some of the most factors that affect that single metric, because every change can affect CTR. Now, Google's going to get rid of average position. In September this year, it'll go away, and it's being replaced by two new metrics. We have impression top and impression absolute top. So what impression top is the percentage of times that your ad was displayed on the top part of the page, right? Where impressions absolute top is the percentage of times your ad was shown in position number 1. So these are a little bit harder to deal with because they're just sort of percentages, right? Than average position, a nice easy number. But average position is highly misleading. If you see your average position is 3, what you don't know is, hey, that's always the top of the page, or for that search query, Google only shows 2 on the top, and that's always bottom of the page, right? 3 doesn't tell you that. It just says here's a number. But it's an easy number to work with and understand. So the newer numbers really show you your visibility, right? Top versus bottom, much clearer. But it's a few numbers in statistics you're working out to see it. So it takes a little more mental processing to work with it. Now, when you're using broad match, your quality score and budget can affect your CTR, which is sort of an odd statement. So as an example here, let's say we have the broad match keyword laptop in our account. And let's say our quality score is a 3, and we're a little budget capped. So Google's not going to take much liberty in how they match that word, because if we have a low quality score, we'll probably show for laptop and maybe some of the used laptop and the plurals and stuff, but we're definitely not going to show for brand names and for, say, a tower computer. Now, our quality score goes up or we have more budget available. Right? Either one of those happens, then Google starts showing, right, your broad match keyword for even more queries. Now, these queries are not quite as related, right, to your initial keyword, so your CTR goes down. Quality score goes up more, budget goes up more. You may have the keyword laptop and you're being shown for the keyword towers or tower computers. Right? Different keyword, different ad than what the user searched for, really low CTR. So sometimes CTR is just affected by your match types. As broad match gets a better quality score, usually what you see is that broad match keyword gets a lower CTR. Now, as always, if you're doing ad testing, pause. You're losing ads. We've been through this in previous webinars before, but when you get above 3 ads in an ad group, Google's ad serving gets really wonky at times. And so usually when you're testing just 2 or 3 ads at once, and then you find those losers, pause them so you push more impressions to your better converting ads, which again, because those ads often have higher CTRs than losers, is going to get you more clicks and spend more budget. Now, cost per click is one of the most straightforward of all the metrics. You set a bid. Competitors set bids. Based upon your quality score and ad rank, right, you pay a penny more than to beat the ad rank of the person below you. So if you see large changes to CPCs, it's generally competitors really changed their bids a lot, you changed your bids a lot, or your quality score went really up a lot or down a lot. Usually CPC by itself is very stagnant unless someone else is making major changes to either bids or quality scores. But so we want to look at, though, is auction insights. Because while we don't see competitor bids, what we can see is have the competitors changed, right, their average position, their position above us rates. So if we look at here's our data and here's someone else's, and suddenly their top of page rate skyrockets and their position above us goes up quite a bit. Well, then either they just raise their bids a lot, or they just raise their quality score a lot, assuming you haven't made changes. So that can tell you, all right, if we want to maintain this, we need to either also change our bids or, right, work on our quality score and add extensions, so forth. So cost has by far the least influential factors of every metric in your account. Cost is the number of clicks you got and your average CPC. That's it. So number of clicks you get has a lot of factors because that gets into CTR and impressions. Right? How much your CPCs have a lot of factors from competitor bids and your bid standpoint. But cost has very few factors, and usually when there's big cost differences, it's because you got a lot more or a lot less clicks. So then we get our impressions, from that we get our clicks, we try to qualify the users so we get the right clicks, they get sent off to our website, right? And then from there, we try to make them, converting users. And so when we think about our conversion standpoint, right, we've got our conversions, which is a factor of the number of clicks we received, and our conversion rate. And then, of course, we have our cost data or CPC data combined with our conversions tells us how much we pay for a conversion. And then we may be tracking for e-commerce. We're probably tracking revenue amount as well and can trend our revenue numbers. Right? So when we think about, did any of these metrics have large changes? Right? Did our conversions change? In this case, 55%, big change. Cost per conversion, 12. Conversion rate, minus 20. And minus 20 is a pretty big number. Right? Cost per conversion, 12% higher. Not huge compared to our conversion change. Right? So we're looking for where are the big numbers. So if our conversions change, well, number one, did our clicks go up or down? Because if our conversion rate is static, our clicks go up a lot, then our conversions go up a lot. Did our conversion rate change? That's a number to obsess over, right? If your conversion rate suddenly goes down a lot, that's going to affect a lot of things you're doing. And so conversion rates usually go down if your targeting changes, right? Something on the website could obviously get broken or some tracking is not working correctly. So if you see major changes in conversions, especially when it's conversion rates, that's when you want to drill down into what campaign and potentially what ad groups did this happen in so we can really, really examine that data to fix it, right? To put things back how they should be. Now, if your cost per conversion changes, right, your big question is, did your CPC go up or down, right? And then did your conversion rate change? It's real simple, right? Because if you spent more but your conversion rate didn't change, your cost per conversion is the same. You just have more conversions. So if your CPC went up or down a lot, that could definitely have effect on cost per conversion. And as your conversion rate goes down, of course, cost per conversion goes up. It's just an inverse relationship. Now, it's useful to look at each of these metrics individually. A lot of times we'll see someone do a trend and they'll make a statement without really understanding if that's the problem. So for instance, right, in this account, their CPAs are going up a lot, right? And they said, well, our CPAs are going up, but really the reason is we were an early adopter into this industry, and so our cost per click was super cheap when we started. We now have more competitors. They have pushed up the cost per click, so that's the reason our CPA has gone up, right? And that was the argument in this particular case. And the problem is we're just looking at CPA and CPC, where one of the big numbers we want to add to that would be something like conversion rate. And it turns out in their case, competitors were not pushing up CPCs yet. There still were very few in the industry. Their conversion rate was tanking. Right? And that's why we want to make sure we're not looking at just one or two pieces of data, that we're looking at more of these metrics because they all have influences on each other. So if we see big changes to conversion rates or return on ad spend, one of the first things to look at is, did your competitors change their offer? Right? You might have had a really good offer. Your competitor came with a better offer, and suddenly, they're getting those conversions. And so, number one, are changes to your offers or changes to competitor offers when you see a big change? Number two, did something break? I mean, landing pages break. It's just websites are living entities. Things come, things go out of stock, products no longer sold, new products are introduced. So did something break? Right? Good question. And then lastly, did tracking change? Was an attribution model applied? Right? If you apply an attribution model and you change how data flows across the account, then your trend analysis, can only really include data for when the attribution changed. Your year-over-year trend, account level should be okay, but when you drill into campaigns and ad groups, it's going to be off because you've changed how conversion data sits. Now, this is where we look at a lot of stuff. We often want to segment data, Averages hide a lot, and it's only when we segment a couple of times so we really get to the root causes. So, for instance, in this case, their CPA had gone down a little bit, and it had gone down a little bit, so no one was really paying that much attention, to what was going on because, hey, that's a good change. Well, what had happened is they had launched a new website that was almost impossible to navigate on tablet devices. And their tablet CPA was skyrocketing, but because there was so much less traffic from tablets than desktops, no one saw this issue with tablets because they were looking at the aggregated data. And because desktop CPA was dropping so much, no one noticed that problem. So when you're trying to look at huge amounts of data at once, humans are not good at staring at a massive Excel spreadsheet and picking out the 5 numbers that matter. That's where we often want to add visual cues for ourselves. So heat maps. You can make heat maps in Excel, third-party programs, whatnot. We can glance at data. In this case, just impressions, but it could be conversion rate, ROAS, whatever. And we can quickly see, here's when we get our most impressions. There's no hunting and looking at a huge sheet to try to figure out what numbers are bigger or smaller. And any outlier would just pop out immediately. We'd see some green number in the middle of a sea of red. No, that's an outlier. We want to look at that. So then when we see, okay, now we know there's something big that's a problem. Usually our first step then is to isolate it. Isolate it and say, let's drill down into the campaigns with the biggest changes. Then maybe even drill down into the ad groups for the biggest changes. And then look at our overall data analysis at the ad group level. Then we're going to find, here's what the problem is. And once we see that problem, we often might want to even go look, Or we may not see the problem. It may even see, here's the time frame it happened. We can go to our change history, Google logs most, not all changes, most changes you make in your accounts, whether it's API, editor, the interface directly. And so you can isolate, here's the time frame, here's the changes. I mean, in this account, and this isn't massive changes, but this account had 30,000 changes in, roughly 4 weeks. So there's no way you're going to diagnose, 30,000 lines of data to see what change affected things. We're going to say, here's where it happened, so we can segment down to the campaign or ad group. Here's the time frame it happened in, so we can usually segment down to, a couple of days. Now we can look and say, okay, what changed, in that spot? So then once we've diagnosed our problem area, right? We found here's our campaign, here's our ad group, here's whatever it is that's wrong, right? Then we're going to segment a couple times. We're just going to segment by device, maybe network, could be geography, time of day, different audiences, to see do one of these things is responsible for the change, right? Do we have a big change in our CPAs by device? Did suddenly our search partner network spike up in traffic? Did we go dark in New York City for whatever reason, and therefore it's the largest city in the U.S., our impressions drop a lot, and that caused our loss of conversions, right? So then once we figure out here's the diagnosis, right, then we want to create an action plan going forward to fix the issue. Sometimes it's as easy as unpausing a few keywords or adding a few bid modifiers. Other times it's more, a lot more, hey, we need to, lay out a new ad testing plan because our CTR dropped too much, and I took our conversion rates with it, but we don't have that offer anymore. So the offer is no longer, available. So we need to come up with something new that we can use to get our CTR and conversion rates back up, right? That's a much more in-depth plan. But the reason we want to look at interrelated metrics, right? In this account, their conversions went up 55% month over month. Now, normally, right, if you call up your client or your boss and say, yep, we got 55% more. Sounds like that's a great number. But actually, in this case, a 55% increase in conversions was not a good month. The impressions had gone up 94%. Costs went up 73%. Conversions only went up 55%. Right? When we look at that holistic picture of the account, right, we realize that, wow, our impressions went up a lot and our costs went up a lot, but because we had a 20% decrease in conversion rates, we only got 55% more conversions. So now we need to look at where did our conversion rates fall, right? Was it, hey, did we add a bunch of new keywords and that's why impressions skyrocketed, but those keywords, none of them converted, right? And that's what we want to look at here. We want to look at our conversion rates. We want to look at a month-over-month delta to say, hey, where do they fall? And then if we don't see any place they fell, we want to look, did we add anything new that just didn't convert? Right now, usually when your client or your boss calls you up and says, hey, you pretty much doubled my spend last month. What's going on? Right? That does not sound like a fun conversation, right? Like, we doubled your spend. Well, in reality, in this particular case, it was a great month. Right? Impressions went up 87%. But CTR was better, so clicks went up 108%, even more than impressions went up, and conversions went up 136%. For most people, this is a very successful month, right? And so that's why when someone says, hey, why did Y change? Why did X change? Why did Z change? That's an impossible question in isolation to answer, right? What we want to look at is, okay, so why did X change? Well, let's look at the picture. Let's see what influences that particular metric, and then see, hey, what are these influences? How do they change? So we can formulate a quick answer. And so that's why we kind of love these sort of charts, right? Because if someone says, hey, why did costs go up 95%? You can hit like two buttons, glance at this and say, well, costs went up 95%. Because our clicks went up 108%, and that went up so much because our CTR was higher. So even though impressions didn't go up, they went up a lot, 87, we have a higher CTR. Our CPC actually went down, so we got 108% more clicks for that budget increase. Yes, there was a 95% budget increase, but because our conversion rate was higher and our CPCs were lower, your cost per conversion went down 18%, and we got 136% more conversions. So that is a 30-second story from looking at data for about 15 seconds, right? Normally when someone says, hey, why did my spend double? It's often that puts people in sort of scramble mode, and they spend hours diagnosing things when visual charts can tell you so much in a very small amount of time. So you can do this yourself. This is not that complicated. Data Studio is a tool Google gives away. It's free. It's a fantastic tool if someone else makes the templates for you. It is an incredibly difficult tool to make stuff from scratch. You have to really understand how a lot of pieces fit together. So we design a lot of Data Studio templates because we love it, and we have a few people who have the time to actually sit and work on it. So this is Google Data Studio, where you can see very quickly, right on a page, how the metrics change. On the second page, here's the campaign deltas, so you can see the differences by campaign, by metrics. So you don't have to build this yourself. It takes several hours to build. But the trick with Data Studio, if you've never used it before, is setting up your environment correctly. If you don't, then what may happen is you go to add another report and you don't know which account it's actually working from, or things get really messy very quickly. It's not that hard to set up correctly if you know what you're looking for, right? So on the third page of this Data Studio report are links to videos that show you how to use it. So if you've never used Data Studio, right, the fifth one is Getting Started with Data Studio. Click on that, watch the video. It's not that long, but it'll ensure as you use this template, other templates, there's a lot of good free ones out there, right, that you're setting it up correctly, and then you know how to duplicate it and share it, because that way you could even share it with a client. You can send it to them, and they can just look at their data themselves. And so, a lot of our recent webinars have been, you should not be doing reporting manually. Right? Reporting is the largest time sink of any task for agency and in-house people. It is unquestionably the biggest time sink. So places like Data Studio lets you create templates, and then the data is automatically refreshed. So you create your report, you change the time frame, right? All the data gets refreshed. You hit a download button, you email it, and your reports are finished, right? Reporting should be real quick, but you need to set the templates up first. And there's a good place to start with those. All right, and with that, I will turn it back to Dan to see if we have any questions and thoughts.
Most people have their questions answered already, and I just want to say if there's anything that you can add to maybe sum things up, if there's just one or two things that even the most basic person could do at an introductory level to improve their failed campaigns, what would those be?
It would be to look at where something changed, right? Number one. So if you go just into your Google Ads account, right, and you go to the home screen of your Google Ads account where the campaigns are, there's a chart at the top of the page, right? In the chart, you can do something like, say, show me conversions and cost per conversion, or show me conversions and clicks. Google chart it up for you. Then you can immediately see, do you have a change? Do you have a trend? What is it? And that's in any screen within Google, right? You can go and look at your audience data and say, here's my audience data. Let me look at my conversion rates and CPA by audience. And it's a great place just to get, for anybody of any level, to see any sort of quick trend data using the built-in charts that are actually right inside your Google Ads account.
Great. Here we have a couple of questions that have come in. Google is always after us to change the data attribution model in our monthly calls. I'm usually opposed to this because it makes it very difficult to compare year over year with the conversions and conversion rate. So what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, this is, so as an overall idea, I love attribution, right? In Simplilearn, we have archive presentations looking through attribution and actually going through your question in a lot more depth than I'm going to right now. If you look at, say, your data and you see the vast majority of your conversions are one-click convert, attribution doesn't matter because you're already last click anyway. If you see that most people are taking 3 or 4 or 5 clicks to convert, the question to ask yourself is Do you want to set bids based upon how a targeting method affects your end results? If yes, then you want to really put an attribution method in place. But yes, it will destroy your year-over-year trending. Right? You can still trend in Google Analytics, because you could leave your Google Analytics data as it is, trend in GA, but then bid from your Google Ads account. But applying attribution model, it is a big decision, right? Although it takes 3 seconds to do, because it does mess up your trending. But it lets you value clicks higher in the funnel, right, to the actual value it's contributing to your business. So that's the question. What would you rather have, right? Bidding that affects the entire customer journey, or great trending data? You can't have both. You have to pick one.
Well, hopefully that answered your question. Great. It looks like you nailed it spot on. I just want to say thanks again to you, Brad, for joining us. If you have any other further questions that didn't get addressed during today's presentation, just tweet us at Simplilearn and we'll get back to you. And of course, remember to follow Brad Geddes on Twitter at BGTheory for more information on PPC best practices and more. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And Brad, thank you so much as well.
And thank you, Dan, for hosting everything once again.